Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about Zilean support. So, thank you very much to Aaron for the very generous donation for being patient with me as I, researched and finally was able to craft this guide. I'm gonna try to do the guides a little bit faster so that we can draw in some new people to the channel that may not want to sit around for my typical hour-long guide. So I'm gonna try. I know I always say this. I'm gonna try to see if I can keep this to 30 minutes or less, and just really hit you with the important stuff to help people play Zilean better. So you can find timestamps in the description if you want to jump around. You can also access the Google Doc if you want to read along as well. And if you'd like a donation, or if you would like a guide rather, it's just a $25 donation. Just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com to set that up. I do have quite a few in queue right now. I can give you an estimation on the time if you'd like, but we could talk about it. Just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com if you're interested in that, and stay tuned because we'll have a lot more guides coming out soon. Okay, let's go ahead and look at Zilean here. I'll pull him up. I use League Wikia for a lot of my basic information. It just has really good stats for all the champions, items. It explains like how they derive stats, so like what armor means, what magic resist means. So it's just a really good informative site. So that's what I'm going to be using for a lot of this. Now Zilean is kind of an odd duck. Thanks for the donation. I appreciate it. Or for the sub. I appreciate it. Zilean's kind of an odd duck in that he's never really that popular, but you do see him show up from time to time, and often he will have a high win rate in certain positions. So like right now, mid lane, he's the highest percentage champion, but he also is on a really low play rate, right? So he has less than a 1% play rate. Now he's basically a utility champion, okay? His damage output as the game goes on is not going to be that high, but he does have a lot of utility as the game goes on, especially in terms of speeding up and slowing people down. That's really his main contribution. He does have the double bomb stun, which is nice, but he's primarily good at helping allies speed up and get into fights, and then to make it really pesky to assassinate single targets, because he can use his chrono shift on them. Now, the enemy does not have to kill the person who's chrono shifted, but especially at lower elos, gold and lower, they're going to kill the person most of the time with the chrono shift. If they don't kill him, then the person's basically invulnerable for 5 seconds. So if it's on a, a high damage target, like if you throw this on a Kog'Maw or an Olaf or something like that, then they're probably going to have to kill him. Or, the Kog'Maw or Olaf or whatever is just going to run him over. So let's talk about his abilities a little bit here really quickly. So his range is 550, so that's pretty respectable. You can land some good auto attack poke during lane. He has 335 move speed, so he's got kind of like average move speed for a mage. So that's pretty good. He has pretty low base armor and pretty low base health, so he is very squishy if you actually get a hold of him. He has no shield and he has no heal in lane, so if he takes bad trades, it's going to be rough. So you have to be very, very careful not to take bad trades in lane. And we'll talk about his matchups later on in the video, like which champions I recommend that he goes into. Now, as he sits in lane, he does generate this extra experience. And then if someone could level up off of the experience that you've stored in the jar, you can click on it, and it will give that person extra experience, and it'll give Zilean extra experience. So usually this is not going to be a massive deal. It will help you hit certain level power spikes a bit faster than other people. So, it could help you hit level 6 just a little bit faster than the enemy team, which can be very useful. So, it's not a massively impactful passive, but it is helpful from time to time just to help people level up. So, it's decent. It's not anything that you really have to actively manage. It's just whenever you can click on someone to give them that experience, just go ahead and click on them and give them the experience. You can try to micro that and say, well, this person's just like maybe 20 experience away from leveling up, and I have, 100 experience stored up here, so I don't want to use that person because I don't want to waste this extra experience that I have. But in general, I would say if you can level them up, just do it, and it'll give you some extra experience too. So that's nice. So in general, he might be a pinch higher in experience than the other support. His AD carry might be a little bit higher. So that's helpful. Now, his bombs are one of his sort of signature things, is he basically throws a bomb on somebody. They have 3 seconds, and then it detonates and blows them up. People in a small radius around the bomb. So it's not just one person. It can hit multiple people in team fights. Now, this is good and bad. Okay, so it's good because it's just kind of a point click. It does a lot of damage. Well, it's not point click. You do have to actually like land it now. It's a pretty quick projectile though. Usually, if you practice it a lot, you can land it pretty consistently. It does up to 300 damage with a 0.9 AP ratio, so it has quite a bit of damage. Has pretty good AP scaling on it. And if you double bomb somebody, so if you hit them with one bomb and you hit them with another, then you end up stunning them for, you know, a second and some change typically. And they're going to take damage from one bomb immediately, and then the second bomb will blow up over time. So that could be up to 600 damage with a 1.8 ratio. So that's a lot of damage. The thing about that is nothing else in your kit does any damage. So your W doesn't do damage. Your W allows you to do the double bomb, but the W by itself doesn't do any extra damage. And then the Time Warp doesn't do damage, neither does Chrono Shift. So yeah, his Q does some nice damage, but that's the only thing in your kit that's going to be doing damage. So basically in laning phase, you want to try to land this on people, you know, just whenever you can. This is going to make him really lackluster against champions that can shield, because, you know, they have 3 seconds to react and just shield this. Now, they have nerfed Janna recently, so she can't shield every single bomb. But she can shield, like, every other bomb and block quite a bit. And it does start getting kind of expensive, too, if you want to be, you know, spamming a bunch of bombs on people. But especially against champions that don't have heals, this is really nice. So this could potentially be pretty good against something like a Zyra. If you can stay out of her roots and consistently land bombs on her, it could be okay. Of course, Zyra can also blow you up. I think Zyra's a pretty bad matchup. I guess it's kind of like a skill matchup. But just against tanks, if you just throw it on their AD carry, so like if they're playing like Braum or Tom Kench, or I guess Tarek can shield it, but like Braum and Tom are good candidates. You know, Braum can't block anything. I don't think he blocks a bomb that's being thrown. He might. I'm not sure about that. But you can slowly whittle down the AD carry. They did just, on this patch, 8.5 nerf fleet footwork, so AD carries early on don't get as much sustain for that. So, you know, your harassment is going to stick a bit more. And if he drops double bombs on a minion wave, it should instantly clear the wave too. So he has pretty good wave clear too with the bomb. Now, his rewind lowers the cooldown on all of your ability, not your ult, but your other 2 main abilities by 10 seconds, which is really nice. So this is how you get the double bomb effect. You basically cast a bomb on somebody, you rewind, you cast it again, and if you hit them with both bombs, you get the stun, you get the big damage. Now, if you're gonna play Zilean support, you have to land the double bomb consistently. That's core, you know, and if you can do that consistently, if you get that stun, that's a lot of damage, and it's going to let people like Tristana or Draven or any other kind of early game bully start to take over the lane. So you really need to be able to land those double bombs. And, you know, this means that he's going to be better against AD carries that don't have a dash or a flash. So, you know, something like a Jinx, something like a Kog'Maw, a Twitch, he could be pretty good against that. And a good combo here is if you can get close enough to do this, because this has a short range of 550 and the bombs have 900. If you can get close enough to somebody, slow them down with the Time Warp, slow down their movement speed for 40%, and then double bomb them. They're not going to be able to dodge it unless they flash or have a dash. So you're going to force the flash from them if you do that. Now, it's very mana intensive. That's 50, 85. Then you have to throw, you know, 2 bombs here. So that's 140. So that's, you know, what, 225 damage? Something like that. Or 225 mana, which is going to be like half your mana pool. So yeah, you can do that. It's very expensive to do that, but that will virtually guarantee that you're going to land the bombs. So Time Warp is another thing that's really good in his kit. It does have pretty short range, but it can slow someone down for 40% for 2.5 seconds. That's a really long time. And you can level it all the way up to 99% slow for 2.5 seconds. I mean, that basically stuns them for 2.5 in terms of... Now, it doesn't slow their attack speed. It's important to note that, and they can still cast their abilities. But that slow is pretty brutal. So you can roll up on people. He's pretty decent on ganks. If you, you know, Time Warp yourself, run up to people, especially if you get... What does that require? Like 30% CDR, something like that? 30, 40% CDR? Let me say. 34% CDR. Yeah, it's 1/3. Something like that. Okay, so once you get to like 35% CDR, this doesn't lower the then time warp. So you can basically time warp and then immediately rewind and time warp again. So you can time warp, get close to people, you know, throw a bomb on them, and then rewind, and then put the slow on them and bomb them again. But yeah, if you roll up on people really quickly, then you rewind and then put the slow on somebody for 2.5 seconds, that can actually be a pretty decent little gank. But it's important this doesn't have diminishing returns either, so it's the full slow for the full amount, which makes it really easy for enemies to hit skill shots on them, right? So it's going to make it easy for Morgana to hit binds, Lux to hit her Q, Ashe to hit an arrow, Zac to guarantee he's going to land his E on somebody. So, you know, that's going to be really good for helping allies hit skill shots. And it's going to be good for helping you hit your skill shots too. So that's a really good effect. And because he can keep spamming this with rewind, once he gets a lot of CDR and Tear of the Goddess, he can get around the map really quickly. You know, 2.5 seconds with that move speed, and then he gets, you know, he can rewind and move speed it again. He can zip around that map really quick. So that's really great for rotations. It's really great if you want to run Banner of Command. You don't have to. That's an option. If you want to try to put some pressure on a side lane, you can get back to your team pretty quickly, so that they don't get caught and killed while you're doing that. So he does have that. And obviously he can speed up allies too. So being able to speed up something like an Olaf or a Skarner or a Hecarim, you know, trying to run at the enemy, is really, really nice. So, you know, there are certain comps where he can be pretty good for that movement speed. And then finally, you have Chrono Shift. This is another signature Zilean move. Now, it's very expensive mana-wise, so you want to make sure you know, have enough mana available for it. But this basically puts kind of like a buff on somebody for 5 seconds, where if they die, it's like they have a Guardian Angel. They go into stasis for 3 seconds, and they pop back up with health. Now, this does scale with AP, so the more AP you have, the more health they're going to get out of it. So if you have 100 AP, you know, at level 6, they're going to have 800 health. So, you know, once you start getting closer to like 100, 200 AP, this can get pretty significant. This can almost give people their entire health bar back. So, really solid ability. Now, Rewind, once again, doesn't affect this. It used to, so that he would always have his ult up. But they took that away years ago. So pretty much, he just kind of controls speed is how you want to think of him. You know, he can run around quickly. He can make allies run around quickly. He can slow people down a lot. And he provides some decent harassment early, and he can double bomb for stuns. I mean, you know, the dream scenario is in a team fight. If you hit like 3 people with your bomb, you know, it can just do massive damage to everybody and stun everybody for 1 second. So, you know, he does have the potential for the big outplay in a team fight. And then, of course, his ultimate is excellent against all-in assassins who have to blow lots of cooldowns to kill you. So that's great against, like, Talon, Zed, Rengar, you know, those type of champions. Or, like, you know, Malzahar, Skarner, anything that's going to have to blow a large cooldown to kill somebody. Can be pretty solid. As long as your team is still going to be there to, like, back them up. So if, like, Skarner flash engages, you know, and grabs your Tristana, and everybody tries to kill him, and you Chrono Shift, Tristana goes into stasis, everyone has to go in there to try to fight, and then to save her, to allow her to escape. Because if you just Chrono Shift somebody, you know, obviously, if you're getting ganked or something, and there's 3 people after you, and you Chrono Shift yourself or your AD carry, they're just going to die again when they wake up most of the time. So, it can be really good in certain situations, but in others, you know, it can kind of be a dud too. But it is very nice. It stops the enemy team from focusing out and, like, one-shotting your team. So there are definitely certain scenarios where that would be really strong. Okay, so he's really good at making allies and himself very quickly. He has pretty good burst in lane if you use the double bomb. Pretty good assassin protection with his ult. He is very mana hungry early. He has very conditional stuns and escapes. You know, he doesn't have a blink or a flash, so if someone gets on you, it's going to be difficult to get away. You can speed up, but sometimes that's just not enough. And then he has pretty low scaling overall with a lot of items. He does have nice, like, AP on his bombs, but nothing else deals damage. You do have AP on your Chrono Shift, but he doesn't have heals. He doesn't have shields. He doesn't do any percentage damage. And the bombs do some alright damage, but, you know, a lot of times you're not going to be able to get to the squishies on the back line, so you're just going to be bombing tanks that are trying to dive your AD carry often, and, you know, it's just not going to do a lot because it doesn't do any percentage-based damage. But, you know, if you have something like a Vi on your team, or just something that's going to be able to lock someone up and make it really predictable, where they're going to be stunned for a little bit, and you can consistently land that double bomb on a squishy, then that actually can be pretty powerful. Okay, so let's talk about runes here really quickly. I recommend some runes, and I'm not really sure why nobody does this. I think people just haven't thought about it, or just haven't explored the possibilities of Zilean that much. He doesn't get played that often. You'll see a lot of the pro builds people are just going like Airy and then Inspiration. I'm pretty sure that's a mistake. I think people just aren't thinking outside the box enough, because Font of Life is absolutely crazy on him, especially in the support role. So if you look at Smoothie here, for example, does he get some Mordekaiser support? No. I don't know why it said he was against Mordekaiser. Anyways. So, you know, he's going Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight. This is so anemic. Like, yeah, the boots are nice early on, but he even went Ardent Sensor at one point, but he has no way to heal or shield anybody with this build. Right? I mean, he doesn't have Redemption, he doesn't have Locket, and he doesn't have Font of Life. So the plus healing and shielding is completely worthless, and I don't even know how you activate that passive. You don't have any plus healing. I mean, yeah, you can only shield yourself with this. I don't know. Smoothie done goofed, as far as I could tell with that build. Oh, I guess you... Okay, I get it. Okay, so you can do, like, Airy. When you speed up an ally with Airy, it would put Airy on them, and that shield would trigger Ardent Sensor. Okay. Okay, so that's one way around it. So you can put it on one person at a time with Airy if you choose to do the speed up on them with your E. So you wouldn't be able to slow the enemy and make that work. But that would work. Okay, so Airy does allow the use of Ardent Sensor. That's one thing that I had overlooked, but it's pretty nice. I recommended Airy anyways. Another way you can get around this is Font of Life, which we'll talk about. And this is even better than Airy because it allows your entire team to get that buff off of Ardent Sensor. So this is old school. If you're new to the channel, you haven't watched when I talked about Stoneborn Pact last season and how strong that was on certain champions in certain situations. So it even says it right here. Font of Life will trigger Ardent Sensor for people who don't get it. So basically how this works, if you slow or stun somebody with Font of Life, your ally... If any of your allies attack that person, then they're going to heal for 1% of your maximum health plus 5. So even if you only have 1,000 health, kind of in the early to mid game, that's still 15 on-hit healing, which is really nice. I mean, if you think about, you know, let's say that an AD carry has like 100 AD and 15 lifesteal, and they're hitting somebody who has 50 armor. Okay, so that 100 damage against 50 armor... is only going to do 67 damage, and then if they have 15 lifesteal, 15% lifesteal, it would only heal for 10. Okay, so if they have like a Bloodthirster or a Death Stance, the normal runes or whatever, you know, they get up to 15% lifesteal, and they have that 100 AD, because remember, lifesteal only applies after damage mitigation. So it has to cut through armor first, and then whatever damage you do through the armor, then that is what lifesteal applies to. This is different. This is straight up whenever you attack somebody. It doesn't matter if they have 1,000 armor, it's still going to heal you for whatever this number is. So this is much better than standard lifesteal would appear. Okay? And so this right here is going to heal you for 15 if you just have 1,000 health, which is pretty easy to get to because it's not bonus health, it's total health. And so even if you don't buy a lot of health items, if you just get like, you know, Eye of the Watchers or something like that, and you have the Resolve, you know, getting the 65 health off of Resolve, that right there is 265 health, so you'd only have to get to like 700 something base health. So you're going to have that around like level 6 or 7. So basically, you know, just really like quick way to think about this is like giving your AD carry 15% lifesteal starting, you know, around level like, yeah, I don't know, 6 or 7, something like that. If we look at Zilean, what his health is like, yeah, he has 900 health with no modifiers at level 7. So even if you just have 100 health off of anything, then that would get you there. Almost just the runes, the 65 off of going in the resolve tree would get you pretty close to that at level 7. So it's like getting 15% lifesteal, not only for you, or not only for your AD carry, but for every single person on your team. So if you have a Warwick on your team, it's like he gets an extra 15% lifesteal on his attacks. If you have, you know, Master Yi or Lucian Middle or, you know, Kaisa Middle or whatever, they're all going to get a ton of health. So this rune is really, really underrated to begin with. Font of Life is a very good rune if you can consistently slow and immobilize people. That heal counts as a heal from you. Okay, so that means you healed them. So it's modified by plus healing and shielding, and it triggers Ardent Sensor. So if we look at Ardent Sensor, heals and shields on allies champions, excluding yourself, enhance you and them, giving out this attack speed and on-hit damage buff. Okay? So that means when you put your Zilean slow on somebody with your E, any ally that auto-attacks that person is going to get healed by Font of Life, and they're going to get the Ardent Sensor buff on them. Okay? And it's going to refresh every single time they hit them. So that makes this rune really, really good. So yes, Aerie does, because Aerie, when you cast your E on somebody to speed them up, Aerie is going to go shield them. Now that's conditional too. That's assuming you haven't auto-attacked an enemy or you haven't pressed a bomb on an enemy or anything like that. Because if you do that, Aerie's going to go to the enemy and it's not going to come back to you, you know, for another 3 to 5 seconds. So Aerie is very, very conditional. It can only work on one person at a time. If you E that person, instead of slowing an enemy, if you speed up an ally, it works. And it doesn't work if you auto-attack or cast any abilities on enemies. So Aerie does work, but it's really conditional, and Font of Life is much, much more reliable, I think. So, you know, but you don't have to choose. You can go both. You can go Aerie and Font of Life, and it works great. Okay, so, you know, that's why I recommend Aerie. You know, it does good harass damage early on. It can put the shield on people later, which is nice. It does scale off of plus healing and shielding, which is good. And then Mana Flow Band is the next one. You are a Mana Hog early, which we talked about. It's very expensive. You can go Ulti Hat, which is cool to an extent, but I would just rather put on more harassment early with Mana Flow Band. I would go Transcendence next. You can go Celerity if you want, but you're already going to be really fast. Because you really want that CDR so that you get more ultimates. And remember, the CDR on your W means that you can spam that even more, which is going to give you more Qs, more Es, more everything. So you really, really want CDR on Zilean. Because the lower the cooldown on Rewind, the more you can rewind your Time Bomb and this bomb as well. Especially once you get to that 35% CDR, that's a key breakpoint, because that will allow you to double Time Warp without any sort of wait time between that, which will really kick it into high gear and let you start zipping around the map. So I think Transcendence is good. Another thing, if you can manage to complete Archangel's Staff, so you have to go Tear of the Goddess early on just so you have enough mana to just spam everything. Once you get Archangel's Staff, that'll give you 20% CDR later on in the game. You'll probably already have max CDR if you go the build that I'm going to be talking about. But that's no problem if you have Transcendence. You know, that'll just turn that extra, you know, 20% CDR into 400 mana, which is like an 800 gold value. So, you know, there's no worries. So Transcendence, I think, is good for giving you that extra 10% right when you reach level 10, which is nice. That'll almost certainly put you at 35% or more, that key threshold. And then later on in the game, it transitions really well once you complete your items. So it's just a great scaling rune. Then you could go Scorch or Font of Life next. If you're consistently landing bombs, Scorch adds a lot of extra pressure to the enemy. If you're not landing bombs a lot, you shouldn't be playing Zilean. But then also Gathering Storm does give you quite a lot of ability power later on in the game. It will make your bombs hurt a little bit more. It will heal people more with your R. But once again, that's going to be late game. So, you know, I think one of Zilean's big strengths is being able to pressure early, so I would probably favor Scorch. But if they have a heal or a shield, anyways, you're up against a Lulu or a Janna or a Soraka or a Sona or something like that, you know, maybe just go Gathering Storm for late game. You kind of just have to feel that one out, depending on what you need. And then I would highly recommend going into the Resolve tree next. There's a couple reasons for this. Number one, Font of Life. I just explained that a lot. It interacts very, very favorably with Ardent Sensor, and it's a very powerful ability in general because you have a point-click slow that slows someone for 2.5 seconds for like a ton. And so that's going to let everyone catch up to him and hit him. So that's going to give your team a lot of healing, and it's going to allow everyone on your team to trigger Ardent Sensor, which is really key. And the healing that they get off of Font is effectively going to be doubled. So it's almost like you're going to be giving people 30% lifesteal because of the way that Athene's Unholy Grail interacts with that, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then Second Wind is another really... So Font of Life is just absolutely core, I think, to Zilean support because of its myriad of interactions that are very favorable. And then Second Wind is arguably one of the most powerful runes still left in the game that's not a keystone. That hasn't been nerfed really that much. It got shuffled around the trees, but not directly nerfed. This is a ton of extra health regen. This is almost like having 2 Rejuve beads early. And this can completely redefine how the laning phase is going. It gives you so much healing in lane. It's just an obscene amount of healing over time. So you really, really want to go Second Wind in this tree. So Font of Life is pretty much mandatory, I think, on support Zilean. You know, if it's a pushover lane, if it's really simple and they have a lot of assassins... You know, if you're against like a Tahm Kench or something and, you know, they have a Zed in the middle, you could consider going conditioning maybe, but I still think Second Wind is just too powerful to pass up. So that's what I would do. That'll give you more health, or in the early game, it'll give you a very favorable interaction with Ardent Sensor and Athene's Unholy Grail, and it gives you some great laning power with Second Wind because Zilean doesn't have a heal in his kit, so this is very helpful with that. Okay. Recommended items, I think that Frostfang is obviously where you want to be. I mean, I guess you can go Coin if you really want to. Frostfang does apply more pressure early on, and it does give you mana regen, which is important because if you go for Athene's Unholy Grail, which we'll talk about, you convert that mana regen into ability power. So Frostfang's going to give you, you know, 50% extra mana regen, and that's going to convert into 10 extra ability power. So, you know, it's not super game breaking or anything like that, but that's 200 gold worth of free stats, right? Like 200 and 217 gold worth of free stats. So it's almost like you get a free kill just for going Frostfang over a coin. So you are going to lose out on a lot of gold over time. But you're going to gain that extra AP. It's going to allow you to harass a little bit more, and it's going to have a favorable interaction with Athenes. So it's up to you. You know, coin is still viable. It's just going to give you a lot less harassment early on, but it will give you more gold if you expect the game to go to 35 or 40 minutes. So maybe if the enemy has an Anivia and you're just like, okay, well, this game's going to take 2 hours, maybe you can go for coin. But under most circumstances, I think Frostfang's where you want to be. Tear of the Goddess, they just did buff Tear quite a bit if you get to Archangels. I think this is mandatory on Zilean support. He just takes up so much mana, but he does have so much utility you can get with that mana. So just being able to spam bombs on people to clear waves, you know, if you can land them on people and do a lot of harassment, that's good. Just being able to zip around the map and ward and, you know, roam middle to try to make plays. And there's so many different things you can do with all of that mana. And he can, you know, fill that up really quickly and eventually get to Archangels, which is super strong. So I think Tier is pretty much mandatory on him. Ardent Sensor is the core item that's like really hardcore and really good on Zilean. You know, it gives you everything you want. I mean, it gives you cooldown reduction, which is great, ability power, mana regen, movement speed, and then it gives you this huge buff whenever you slow the enemy and you have Font of Life. Now, the plus 10% heal and shield power isn't super important to start with, but it does increase the healing from your Font of Life a little bit. So instead of healing for 15, you know, it'll heal for 16.5 per hit. So it's, you know, nothing that's going to totally break the bank. That does not interact with your ultimate because your ultimate isn't a heal. It's an infusion of health. So it's just health regained. Okay, so plus healing and shielding, you know, if you have 20% plus healing and shielding, it's not going to give them an extra 20% here. All right, so just understand that that stat is not amazing on Zilean most of the time. But that's okay because everything else on Ardent is so good, it really doesn't even matter. I mean, the heal and shield power is worth, you know, according to their calculations, about 355 gold. But, you know, if you find the mean between this, it's about 4,000 gold per ally that you're giving that buff to. Or it's about a total of, what, 800 or so? 700, 800 per ally. So if you're giving it to, like, 3 people, so you get it when one person triggers it, and then, like, one other person gets it, that's 3 people, that's 2,100 gold. So even if you take off this cost of 355 and just round it off at, like, 2,100 gold cost, and then you get an extra 2,100 gold worth of value from triggering this on 3 different people in the mid-game, that's 4,200 gold for a 2,300 gold item, which is just amazing in value. You know, it's like 180, 190% efficiency. So, you know, that's really, really good. So even if plus healing and shielding does absolutely nothing, you just took that stat off of this item, it would still be really good. Especially on someone like Zilean, who can trigger it so easily with Font of Life. Another item that I don't see any Zileans getting hardly, that I think is potentially really good if you're going to go Font of Life and Ardent Censer, is Athene's Unholy Grail. This is kind of a weird item, and the reason that you don't get this on a lot of enchanters is because it doesn't have plus healing and shielding on it, and usually just getting something like Redemption Locket or Redemption Mikhail's is going to be better. But because Zilean gets very, very little benefit out of plus healing and shielding, then the stat becomes a lot more attractive, or this item becomes a lot more attractive. Now, after you have Ardent Censer and Frostfang, you're going to have 100% extra mana regen. You get 100% here. It's 200% mana regen. So that's going to be like an extra 40 AP out of it. So that's going to be a 70 AP item for only 2,100 gold. So that right there is really good. And it gives you CDR, and it gives you a little bit of magic resist, which is good. And more mana regen. You know, that's a good stat too. Zilean uses a lot of mana. But then this right here, it seems like, well, there's no way you can trigger this. You're going to be dealing pretty good damage in team fights with your bombs. It's going to hit multiple people, and you're going to be able to spam those bombs a lot as you're using your Ws. You stack up these charges. Each time Font of Life heals somebody, it will use charges. So, you know, when it heals somebody for, you know, 15, it's going to heal them for 30 instead and use 15 blood charges. So, you know, especially when everybody starts hitting that person that you slowed with Font of Life, and there's like, you know, 3 of your allies are triggering that 15 health, you know, every second or so, now they're going to be getting, you know, 15 additional health each time. So it's going to be healing for an extra like 45 each second, you know, on the house, as long as you keep dealing damage. All right, here. So, you know, is the interaction going to be as good as it is with someone like Sona, or maybe even Lulu? Probably not. But it is going to be consistent. So it's not, they're not going to get a huge like burst of health, but they are going to consistently get more health over time as long as you keep damaging people. And so effectively, like I said before, it could, in some situations, it could almost be like giving your AD carry an extra, you know, 30% lifesteal in the mid game, which is obviously really, really big. So, you know, this passive is actually pretty good if you run it with Font of Life on Zilean, if you're consistently landing double bombs on multiple people in fights. It can be pretty nice. And just by itself, like, it's, you know, the gold value is not going to be as insane as it is with Ardent Censer. But, you know, it's still pretty good. It's 115% efficient. You're going to be adding on an extra 100% mana regen here, so that's going to be an extra 20%. So it's going to be 135% efficient. And then however you want to value this, it's really difficult to figure out how to value this passive. But, you know, if you want to think of it like an additional 15% lifesteal, you could look at it that way and see how much lifesteal is worth. You know, that's a really, really rough estimation. I mean, let me look and see. Okay, so we could just call it 10% lifesteal or so for 375. And if you're applying that to like 2 people or so, you know, that's an extra, you know, 750 gold value. That's an extra like 30% efficiency or so. So, you know, now you're getting close to like 170, 175% gold efficiency on that if you get it after Ardent Censer. Once again, a lot of that is very conditional and rough. but it starts to get really valuable. You know, it starts to become close to like 150, somewhere between 150 and 200% gold efficient. So that's pretty good. And then finally, redemption. A lot of people will just go ahead and just rush redemption anyways early on. I don't think you should rush it because plus healing and shielding is not great on you, and AP is so useful, especially early on for harassment. So because you're not going to be getting a ton of plus healing and shielding, I think people just rush redemption because they just, you know, need to rush something and they just don't know what to get. So usually a lot of people just go tier redemption. But I would wait until after you completed the other items. Now this does have a lot of synergy with the stuff that, you know, I just talked about. The extra plus healing and shielding off of Ardent Sensor will scale really well with Redemption's active. So you'll know you'll get an extra 30% value off of the heal there. And then that 150% base mana regen here converts over to 30 extra AP. So if you get this, then Athene's, if you get Ardent Sensor, Athene's, and this, you're going to have 100 AP on Athene's Unholy Grail, which is a really, really good bargain. So I would get this later in the game. Almost everybody else in the game that's going to get Redemption, I always say get it early because it has so much synergy because you need that mana regen, and, you know, a lot of other champions benefit heavily from plus healing and shielding, and they're going to get a lot of that stat. But not so on Zilean, I don't think, because plus healing and shielding is not that great of a stat, as we talked about before. And you're already going to have a lot of mana regen from tier. So I think just going towards that buff from Ardent Sensor, because you benefit so heavily from AP early on in the game, while you're still able to spam your bombs and apply lane pressure, that I think that it's just better to build it that way. You could go Ardent Sensor and then Redemption if you want. If you want to cut out Athene's, that's debatable. You know, I could definitely see going that, but I think that going Ardent Sensor first and then Redemption is better, if for no other reason than, you know, giving everybody that attack speed and on hit is massive, and having ability power in place of, you know, a ton of mana regen and health is also probably going to be more beneficial. But these would be the three things I could get, you know, talk about. If you're super rich, you could get something like a Death Cap. And here's kind of the explanation. I already went through all that. I just put it in the Google Doc. Other items, you could go Banner of Command, you know, maybe after, I think Ardent Sensor is mandatory, but, you know, if you just feel like you're losing or you just want additional side lane pressure, you can go Banner. It will give you some nice defensive stats, so maybe you don't have to ult yourself that often if assassins keep trying to focus you out and force you to ult yourself. That could be helpful. Having that extra movement speed from Raptor Cloak is pretty nice. And the fact that you are really fast will allow you to get to those side lanes, place your banner, and then run back to your normal team hopefully before people get caught, so that could be really useful. So, you know, banner's fine. You're not going to be losing out on a ton outside the laning phase by, you know, skipping some of the plus healing or some of the AP because, you know, like I said, Zilean doesn't scale super well later into the game with AP. It's good early. You know, it will make your bombs hurt later, so you are giving up some of that, but you're giving up some team fight pressure is the big thing. Like, you're either losing the Athene's buff or the Ardent Sensor buff or the Redemption. So you're definitely giving up a piece of team fight to do that. But sometimes side lane pressure is worth it. So that could be something to consider, especially if you have a really bad siege comp team, or you don't have a very good split pusher, like maybe you have a Scion or something like that, and you're against an Anivia and you just have to have some side lane pressure, then Banner can help you out with that. Zeke's is another item. You know, if your AD carry is really far ahead, if you get Ardent Sensor, you can slap a Zeke's on top of that also, especially on a champion that's going to be getting like a lot of attack speed and on-hit interactions. So something like a Twitch or a Varus. Zeke's is really good. It basically gives people 25% extra on-hit damage. I'm pretty sure that can't critically strike. Now, it will trigger twice if they have Gensus, I think, because it is an on-hit interaction. So basically, you turn this on. You're going to lose out on the fire part, probably, though, so you're not going to have the extra, you know, 40 damage and slow. But it'll still give 50% bonus damage over 2 seconds. And they changed this item. I think it'll say, like, around here, 25% on hit. So it's 50% over 2 seconds, but it's only 25 on hit. So if someone's just sitting there or just, like, attacking over and over and over again, it's only 25% bonus magic damage. But if they have, like, 100 AD, that's 25 on hit damage, which is a lot. You know, Varus just destroys people with his on hit off of his W, and most of the time that's only 26 extra damage. So, you know, 25 extra on hit. What's that valued at? Wits End might. I think Wits End has that. Yeah, 42 on hit magic damage. It'll tell you what that's kind of worth here. Okay, so 40 on hit damage. So it looks like it's worth 25 each. Is that right? Yes. Yeah, 25 each. So, you know, getting an extra 25 on hit damage would be 225 golden value. Yeah, 25 times 25. So that's respectable. That's good. And then if they're getting double hits, you know, off of Ginsu's Rage Blade, or if they're... It also applies, I believe, to multiple targets. So if they have Hurricane, each one of those people hit by the Hurricane is going to be dealt that on-hit damage. So all of a sudden that turns into, you know, like 675 gold worth of extra damage. And Ginsu's, you know, adds an extra 50% to that. So that's almost 1,000 gold worth of extra damage. So it's okay. The thing about this, though, if you want to go Zeke's, is you want to be using your ult reactively, not proactively. So you don't want to start a fight just by throwing your ult on somebody. You know, you want to wait till they're pretty low, like at least 20% or lower, depending on how comfortable you are with the lag and stuff like that. But anyways, what that means is for a lot of the fight, your AD carry is not going to have this buff, even if you put it on them. So this is much better on a champion that uses a proactive ult. So something like a Rakan, who uses his ult to start a fight. So Zeke's is going to be ticking, or like a Leona, or something like that. You really don't want to have this on a champion that's going to have a reactive ult like a Zeke's or a Janna. But it can be done, you know, if they are... super fed and you just really want to go this item, you know, you can make it work. It will allow them to clean up after you ult somebody at the end. Also, they're going to be losing time if you have to ult them. So if you have to ult your Cogmaw right before they die and it triggers this, they're going to lose 3 seconds of it. But it does last for 10 seconds, so they will have it ready to go when they wake up. So once again, it's up to you. I don't think it's amazing on him, but it is an option if you really want to help your AD carry snowball a little bit harder. I just think giving them, you know, that extra 15% lifesteal off of Athene's effectively is going to be more useful. But, you know, it's up to you. So, you know, 90% of the time I would go Ardent Athene's Redemption. You know, if you're getting crushed by, like, an AP mage, you could maybe get, like, a Banshee's Veil if you're just really scared. I guess you could get something like that. But overall, this is what you should get. If you're super rich, you can get a Death Cap. You know, the AP will make everybody come back with, like, all of their health off of your ult. You know, after you complete Archangels and go Death Cap. But, you know, you just have to be super rich at that point, you know, where, you know, you've got, like, 8 kills and you're just about to push down their last couple of inhibitors or something like that. You might be able to roll for a Death Cap, but by and large, it's just too expensive. All of these are this is 2,300 gold item. These are 2,100, so... It's really nice. As far as matchups go, and then we'll call it a guide here. His best matchups are going to be champions that don't apply a lot of poke pressure in lane, that you can just kind of bully out. They don't have great healing and shielding in lane. So something like a Thresh, Braum, Tom Kench, Rakan, you know, and then try to stick the bombs on the AD carry. Rakan can shield some of that off, but his shield's pretty weak early on. A lot of Rakans won't max that shield. I mean, they can, but it's okay. And especially if you land those double bombs, it's really nice. So, you know, he doesn't have, you know, you're not picking him for, like, really good lane matchups. Like, if you just stick bombs on people, it's okay. I mean, he's actively bad against people that heal and shield in lane, because you're not going to be able to apply any pressure. So something like a Janna, Lulu, Soraka, Nami are going to be rough. Zyra can be rough. Zyra is weird. I mean, I guess I could take Zyra off here because that's kind of a skill matchup. If you can consistently land bombs on Zyra without getting caught by roots, that's actually really good for you because she has no way to heal through that. So that's kind of like a little game of cat and mouse there. So that one's okay. But something like Nami, Janna, Lulu, Soraka are just going to, like, bust you up in lane, probably. Unless you just always land that double bomb. The main reason you would pick him, I think, is if you have bruisers that are really dangerous that can be kited, that you want to speed up. So, and those are becoming very popular right now, right? With Predator is going to be really hot on this patch, like Predator, Hecarim, Olaf, Skarner, Volibear, all these champions, especially the junglers, are really going to like Predator, because I think Predator plus Righteous Glory plus Randuin's with Ingenious Hunter is going to be a really, really strong build for a lot of junglers. I talked about this in my patch notes video. And Zilean fits in very well with that. Right, so giving Hecarim all that extra speed, or Olaf all that extra speed, Skarner, all these people are going to love that speed. And then they can go in there, suicide, do their business, you know, assassinate the AD carry, and then you can throw the ult on them and make sure that they're going to be able to survive it. And so that's a really good combo of just helping somebody run in there, start a fight. I mean, someone like Darius or Nasus would be really good with this too, because it's really hard to kite a Darius when Zilean's giving him 99% extra speed. And then you have to use all these resources to try to kill him, and even if you do kill him, then Zilean can just ult him. So you can throw bombs on him, you know, drop a bomb on their head. This is something that a lot of people don't do very often, but if Hecarim's about to run in, or Olaf, just go ahead and drop a bomb on their head. It doesn't deal damage to them, but it does deal damage to the person that they stick to. So, you know, go ahead and drop a bomb on them. He's really good at dealing with teleports and stuff like that too, or like Twisted Fate is another interaction that's really good, because you can just drop 2 bombs like right on top of where the teleport or the Twisted Fate or the Tahm Kench or whomever is going to show up, and it'll automatically stun them when they roll up. So, you know, it's kind of a little known fact as well. So there are all kinds of little tips and tricks you can do with him. But yeah, he really wants to be with bruisers that want to get in there and terrorize the back line. He allows them to get there, and he gives them the safety of resurrecting when the team finally does deal with him. So there are definitely some comps out there where Zilean could be pretty good. You just want to make sure you're not going to get busted up in the lane too much if you're against a very aggro laner. You know, pre-6, he has a hard time with all-ins too. So, you know, if they have like a Leona or an Alistar or a Blitzcrank or something like that, that can be really rough also, because you don't offer any protection to your AD carry other than maybe a double bomb if they get blitz hooked or Alistar decides to fight pre-6. So, you know, just be really careful with that. But, you know, if you have these type of champions on your team and you can make it through the laning phase, then he could be a really good pick. Especially if you go for this build, which it seems like nobody ever does, but is a really, I think it's a really smart, like, good build. Because one problem before I started like researching for this video is that I just didn't think there was going to be that good of a build for him, because he can't really build tank. It's just very awkward. He can't build plus healing and shielding that well. Like, he can't go all out on it because he doesn't have as much plus healing and shielding. So he can't go Mikhail's, and Redemption feels awkward. So he's just kind of caught in this weird spot where he doesn't scale that well, and he doesn't scale with plus healing and shielding. He doesn't scale with health or armor or anything like that. So he's just kind of, and like a couple of his skills don't even like have any AP ratios on him. So he's just kind of in this really weird place where you can't really build him traditional AP tank or enchanter. You kind of have to get these hybrid items. But then I started doing that research. I was like, oh, Ardent Censer and Athenes actually work really, really well with him, I think, if you take Font of Life. So hopefully this will be your, you know, this will be something that can really hook you up and help you out if you're a fan of Zilean support. But you, like me, have had a hard time sort of figuring out where would you want to play this champion and how would you itemize for this champion. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hopefully this helps you out, Aaron. Once again, thank you much for the donation and your patience with me on this. Finally got it done. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks to everyone else out there who's watching as well and who wants to try out Zilean support. I might actually try this out. You know, I don't know if I'll do it in ranked, but I might do it in a normal. It does look pretty fun now that I think I've got a build that, you know, could potentially work here. It does look pretty tempting and interesting, especially, like I said, since tier has become a lot better, and especially since the meta right now is going to very heavily favor these just run at them with Predator type of champions. This could really be one of the best metas we've seen for Zilean support in a long time. So anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.